right, guys, welcome back to 87 Sound. This is another playback engineering video. I've been having some things come up. I've been kind of starting to dip my toe back out there into the playback world, and some questions have been coming up from myself, from other guys that I've sent out on some shows and things like that. And so it prompted me to put together a list of all the things you should kind of check off your list before you go out and do a gig. That way, anything that comes up, you'll be ready for it. There's always something that comes up on a gig in live music unexpectedly. There's always something doesn't work. A cable goes bad. Your interface explodes. It could be anything, right? You have a loom, your loom doesn't work, or some of the channels on your loom stop working. There's so many things that can happen. Some of them can have something to do with you, some of them don't. The whole point of this is having everything we need so that we can make sure we'll be prepared for whatever comes, all right? Now, we're gonna approach this from tour style, right? The whole reason that we started this page was to give insight into what it's like doing playback on major tours, okay? And the level that you need to be thinking at to be able to do that. All right. And, you know, I'm biased, but I genuinely believe that this is the best place that you're going to find that information on YouTube, right? Or anywhere else on the internet, in my opinion. All right. So let's get right into this. We're going to talk about a few things. First, we're going to talk about computer specs. What specs do you need to build out your computer to be efficient for running playback? And we're going to talk about your pre-travel checklist, right? Meaning you're getting ready to go on tour. Now, all of this information will work for any context, right? Going on tour with Beyonce, right, is like the height of playback, right? You're going to make the most money. You're going to, it's going to be the most challenging, right? That's like the top of the top. But all of the information that you would need to do something like that, all of it trickles down, right? So all of this is relevant, even if you're doing a smaller artist, if you're doing a local gig, if you're just doing this for yourself for a solo show, if you're doing it at church, like whatever it is, whatever context that you're doing playback, all of this information will be relevant for you. All right, so we're going to talk about pre-travel, meaning what do I need before I hit the road? Or I need to make sure it's in place before I hit the road. And your pre-show checklist, meaning right before the show is starting, what things do I need to check to make sure I'm good and ready for the show? All right. So computer specs is first. All right. I always say Apple because that's all I've used. So MacBook Pro or Mac Mini. It's not to say you can't use another computer, but I just can't go into the details of what it's like doing playback on a PC because I've never done it. I have seen people who have like custom built PCs that they use, but that was like, to run playback for the Grammys, like an entire award show, like a broadcast type thing. So I don't know what goes into that. So all I can speak on is what I've used, and that's Apple, MacBook Pro or Mac Mini. Your processor, I would recommend getting one of the new M chips, M3 or M4. Do they have an M5? I don't know. But you can, if you have the latest Intel chip, you can use that as well. That will work. I've done whole tours on that, like within the past couple years. So, but I will say I'm using the M3 right now for my church, and it is so fast. Like it's almost, the computer is almost using 0% of the CPU to run our sessions. It's just really powerful. So I would recommend getting that because it's just way more scalable over, in the long run. And at least a 1 terabyte SSD. Make sure you get an SSD internal drive, okay? Because they're faster. I don't even know if they make laptops without that now, but at least a terabyte. I would really say get 2 or 4 if you can, but this is all depending on budget. So I'm just giving you the least, what the very bare bone minimum you can work with, depending on what your budget is. You need to at least get a terabyte, okay? If you're using the computer only for playback, meaning you're only going to have Ableton and nothing else on that laptop, you might be able to get away with 500 gigs. All right. But honestly, why even chance it? Just get the terabyte. Memory, you need at least 32 gigs. I would say more, 64 or higher. Do they do higher than 64? I'm pretty sure they do. Get the highest you can, but at the very least, get 32. I've never done a professional playback gig on a computer with less than 32 gigs of RAM. And even the computers that were running 32 gigs, I had issues with sometimes. So I would say do more, go higher if you can. Also, it's important to make sure that you're keeping your hard drive clean. Meaning, if you have a 1 terabyte hard drive and you only have 20 gigs of space available on your hard drive, that's not like you're going to have issues. Your computer's going to run slow. Your sessions are going to be like a little janky. It's just not, you're going to have problems. All right. So you need to be keeping at least 40 to 50% of your hard drive space open, free. So if your playback computer, you really only need the software. Like, you have the software that you're running. Let's say you're running Ableton. You maybe could have Pro Tools on there as well. Just in case there's a time where you need to create your own stems from a session, which I've had to do before. But aside from that, you don't need to have a bunch of stuff on that computer, right? So you need to be keeping 40 to 50% of your hard drive space available, because that's gonna make the computer run clean. All right, that's super important. Okay. All right, let's get into our pre-travel checklist. This is everything you need to make sure you're prepared and comfortable. Really important. All right. So your first is your rig. All right. This is your interface. Computer, laptop, Loom if you're using one, right? Obviously, if you're using a digital interface like this one, you won't have this. But if you have an analog or a hybrid, then you'll have something like this you'll keep with you, right? This is all stuff that would be in your playback rig. And that your playback rig will be self-contained, right? Meaning it'll all be in a case, whatever. You just, if you're the only one handling it, it won't take, you won't have to spend a lot of time like checking it to make sure everything's there. If you put everything in there from the last gig, everything's there, right? So that's the first thing, your rig. All right. Now, aside from your playback rig, you need to keep a personal Pelican. That's just for you. Put a piece of white tape across it and write your name on it or whatever, or put some stickers on it, whatever you need to be able to, signify to yourself and others that it belongs to you. And you're going to put a bunch of stuff in there. All right. First thing we're going to keep is extra cables and adapters. So USB-C, these are the cables for connection. Whatever cables you use to connect your interface to your computer, you want to keep extras of those. All right. That can be USB-C, USB-A to C, USB-B to C, Thunderbolt, whatever. Right. Also, if you use a controller like a drum pad or something like that, to run your playback, you need to keep an extra one of those too, which could be a micro USB or USB-B, right? And you need to keep the adapters, so the actual cables, right? So all these could be made in the cable, but it could also be an adapter. So like if you have a micro USB that goes micro USB to USB-A, then you would get this USB-A to C adapter to connect that to your computer if you needed to, right? Either way, you just want to keep a bunch of these. Just keep, I used to just buy them and just keep them, right? Whether or not I even use them. I just had a whole bunch of them. I lost some on tour, I had so many, right? You also need to make sure that the cables are compatible with the gear you're using, right? You need to understand that USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 or 4 or 5 are not necessarily the same thing. So you need to understand what your interface uses, what's compatible with it, and make sure that you get extras of that cable, right? Because if you have an interface that uses Thunderbolt 4, then you try to use a USB-C cable from Amazon to hook it up to your computer, it might not work, right? So we need to be aware of all those things. Also, in your personal Pelican, you're going to keep a USB dock, meaning something like this where you have extra inputs, extra USB ports, USB-C or Thunderbolt 4, whatever ports. You got an Ethernet port on this one. You got some regular USB ports. All right. This one is by OWC, I believe. Yeah. There's a lot of them. Apple makes some. You can get them. I always recommend OWC because they make really high quality stuff. You're gonna keep an extra pair of in-ear monitors, your in-ear headphones, or over-ear headphones, a pair of cans. You want to keep something like that because if something happens with your in-ears, your cable comes loose, or you drop them and they crack or something, you need to have some type of backup to where you can listen to the show. All right. If you're running an analog rig, you're going to keep a backup loom. All right. That XLR loom with all the cables wrapped up into one thing. You're going to keep an extra one of those just in case something happens with the main one that you're using. Then you want to keep, this is a major key. All right. This is one of those things that you wouldn't know unless you were ever in a position where your laptop, when you're out at a festival in the middle of summer and it's burning hot outside and your laptop starts to overheat because you're on stage and you're set up and you're right in the sun and there's no shade, there's no cover, there's no, sometimes they put a little tent or like umbrella thing up, but maybe you're not quite under it and whatever. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. So you need to keep a laptop cooler, something like this, that you can put the laptops on during the show that'll keep them cool. All right. And I've had that happen to where it was like a real problem. Like, I don't know if the laptop is going to stay on through the whole show because they keep overheating. So keep one of those with you in the summertime. All right. Also in your personal Pelican, you're going to keep a screwdriver. Something small. You don't need to keep a big old toolbox with a whole bunch of stuff. Just keep something like this. That's a small screwdriver with a bunch of different attachments. You can throw the ratchets on there. You can throw the different type of, screws on there. Phillips, flathead, whatever. This is just so if you need to get into your rig to fix something, you can do that. You need to take the back plate off and check something. You can just, you can do it quick. Also, you're going to keep some gaff tape and some electrical tape. All right. We'll talk a little bit later why you need the gaff. Other extras. Always keep your personal laptop. If you're going on a long run, you're going to have your personal laptop anyway, most likely. But I would keep up my personal laptop just in case, honestly, anything happened with the laptops in the rig. So if something happened, I would have my personal that I could just swap in real quick. All right, without having to panic until you could get a replacement. You're going to want a comfortable chair. All right. Now, please just trust me on this. All right. Because think about it. If you're on tour for 2 months, doing a show every night, every other night, you're the playback engineer. You're not going to be standing up through the whole show. Like, you're going to be sitting a lot, right? You're going to be sitting in this chair for hours. So you want to make sure that you have something comfortable, something that supports your back, something that's a little cushy, something that, if the show might be an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes. You don't want to be sitting for 2 hours in a, you know, one of those wooden or one of those like metal fold up chairs. Like, you won't, trust me. You don't want to be looking around the venue trying to see, oh, y'all got a chair around here. Like, no, get you a chair that you like. All right. Get it yourself, or try, or see if the production manager might, you know, get one for you. You know, ask them to buy you a chair. If it's that kind of budget that they're working with. Otherwise, no, get one. It's super important. All right. Get you a table and a tablecloth. A table, this is kind of optional because, you know, I mean, you would have to get a table anyway. So this is not necessarily something that you would have to get yourself. But, you know, the production manager could just get any kind of fold up table that's big enough to fit all your stuff on, and a tablecloth. The tablecloth is just, honestly, it just looks nicer, right? It just looks neat. You can throw it on that way. It just doesn't look, you know, without the tablecloth, it kind of looks a little janky. And how your station looks, whether you realize it or not, is going to affect your mental. All right. So you want your stuff to look neat and clean. You need something relaxing and calming. Candle, incense, body oil, something like that. This is obviously optional, but it's a personal touch, right? Anything that you have that you know will help to keep you in a positive mindset. It could even be like a little figurine or something, you know, a bobblehead or something. You know what I'm saying? It can be anything that you just want to put on your table to make you feel. You're going to be away from home for a long time, so you need to have things that can make you feel like home, if that makes sense. All right. So I used to have this body oil that was like ginger and sandalwood body oil that I used to order. I still order from this company called Ginger Yum. And I'm giving them some free promo right now. Ginger Yum is a couple in Atlanta, a husband and wife who make this stuff, and they make great products, right? So I used to keep their body oil, and so I would just rub it on my hands and just kind of like smell it, and then you just make me feel really calm and put me at ease, you know, because it's a high stress environment, so you need stuff like that to kind of keep your mind right. All right. Now to the pre-show checklist. Right? And we got all our stuff for tour. We're good to go. Now, this is the stuff you need to make sure before the show. All right. The first thing is for your cables and your table. So you make sure that everything's plugged in, obviously. I know that seems simple, but trust me. There was a time where I was panicking before a show because I couldn't figure out, the computer and the interface were not connecting. And I couldn't figure out why. And it was freaking me out. And at the end of the day, it just turned out that I taped something down to the table too tight, or I didn't give enough slack in the cable, and it slightly pulled out of the adapter. I had a USB cable going into an adapter, a USB A to C adapter, and it separated just a little bit in the adapter. And so I just eventually just went and checked, because I was looking at all kind of crazy stuff. I'm like, is it a firmware? I got to re-download the drivers. I was uninstalling stuff. I was doing all this crazy stuff. And eventually something told me, like, just check the connections. And I just looked. I'm like, this thing ain't even plugged in. So you want to make sure everything's plugged in. You want to secure it with tape, meaning you want to take a little strip of gaff tape. You want to tape it. You want to tape the connection. So where the cable is plugged into the computer, you want to tape it right across the top of the cable to the computer. You want to tape all those down to the laptop. All right. And then any excess cable, you want to tape it down to the table so that nothing's moving around, none of that. All right. You also have your power distro, which is this, something, you'll get something like this at every venue where they'll give you a block like this to plug all your stuff up. There might be a strip as well. Whatever it is, Some people leave it on the floor. I don't like to leave mine on the floor personally. I'm paranoid, so I'll put it up on, and it'll have a big thick cable connected to it here. I'll put mine on the table, and then I'll tape it down to the table, and then now wherever it's flowing to, you just make sure that it's it's all the cables are always ran a certain way anyway, but you just want to make sure that it's not there's no way for somebody to just come kick it, right? You don't want anything hanging off your table that somebody could walk past and accidentally trip over or kick and unplug or ram, drag everything off your table or anything like that, all right? At the end of the day, if something like that happens, it's not, should somebody come and, accidentally kick over everything on your table? No, but it's your job to prevent those things from even happening. All right. Same with your XLR loom. If you're using one, you want to tape that. I used to tape mine under the table. It used to run to, the thing that where they used to plug everything in. I can't think of the name right now for some reason, where all the inputs, would patch into. And I would just kind of keep it under my table, and I would take my loom and I would tape it up under the bottom of the table so that there's no excess, nothing, right? There's nothing for anybody to ruin, right? Potentially. All right. You also want to consider blocking off access to your table completely, literally making it to where nobody can even get into that space, right? However you can do that, taking some cases or crates or whatever, just roping it off or taping it off, whatever. Because especially some shows, you're gonna have people backstage, right? Who aren't a part of the crew. Just random people who might have just showed up, somebody's friends from that state or city that just came to the show. Or it could be a festival. If you're at a festival, it's gonna be all kind of people on the side of the stage and back, so people see a table and a chair and they'll just take it. They'll just go sit down, or they'll pull up another chair and just sit down at your table and put drinks on food and stuff on your table. So you need to make sure it's clear that, hey, this is not a community table, all right? This is, I used to have to tell people sometimes, if you were to spill that drink over, if you were to have took that drink and spilled it over this computer, the show would have been over. Do you realize that? And they're like, oh, because people don't know what you're over there doing. So yeah, I would recommend to block that off. All right. So as far as your session goes, all right, you want to check for any last minute. This is pre-show stuff. So you want to check for any last minute changes. If there were any changes to the set, you would have known that probably at sound check or whatever, but you just checking to make sure that everything's right. All right. Now you're going to run through the entire session, meaning if you're using whatever you use, a controller, whatever, you're going to have your A and B computers. You have both computers. If you're running redundant, you have both computers. You're going to have your whole setup exactly how you would have it for the show. You're going to scroll through each song. If you're using set list or whatever it is you do, right? You're going to scroll through each song. Make sure that everything's functioning properly. You're getting to each song right. All your markers are set correctly. All right. You're going to check any auto stops or loops, any MIDI commands or any, whatever stuff you have in your session. You're going to check all that. Make sure the loop is running right. If you have a loop, make sure that the stop markers are working, that it's stopping at the right point. If you have patch changes or auto-tune changes in your main session, you're going to check all of those. Check your auto-tune computer. Make sure when you scroll to the song that it's changing to the right preset. You're going to go through and check all of that. You're going to check your output routing in Ableton. Look at all your outputs. Make sure that they're corresponding to whatever your interface software is. So you'll have some type of, if you're running the Play Audio, you'll pull up Oracle and you just check. You'll do your checks before you even check with, your monitor in front of house engineers for tap through, right? You're gonna check that all your outputs are routed right, okay? You're gonna make sure that all the edits that you made, any edits that you made on the main computer, that you copy them over right to the B computer session, right? Make sure everything is the same, or however you run yours. So like, I know for me on my B computer, I used to keep extra songs in the session. So because we were on tour and every now and then something would get thrown out, she would want to do like one of her old songs from her first album or something. And so I didn't want to keep a bunch of extra stuff in the main computer session, because I'm like, I want to try to keep this session as clean as possible. But on the B computer, I would keep a handful of songs just at the end of the session, so that if something got thrown out at the last minute, at the very least, I could just switch to the B computer and just run it quick. So aside from that, whatever songs that you're doing, you want to make sure that you have the same version on both computers, because God forbid you switch to the B computer and you don't have the same edit in there, right? And last but not least, right before you're getting ready to do the show or tap through or whatever you're doing, after you do all your checks, I used to literally say a prayer over my gear and my whole table. I used to literally close my eyes, take some deep breaths, and literally touch. I used to lay my hands literally on my computers, on the table, on my controller, my drum pad, on the interface, on the Playback Rig, right? And it's just something that made me feel more at ease. It made me feel confident. It made me feel like, okay, God is with me. God is blessing what I'm doing, and and I'm good, right? And so whether you're a spiritual or religious person or not, whatever it is, that I'm just telling you what I do, right? Whatever it is that you can do to like make you feel at ease, comfortable, and confident that you're ready for the show, that's all I'm saying. Just something like that that'll get your mind in the right space that it needs to be in. All right. And at that point, that's it. You're ready. You're ready for tap through and showtime. Tap through is literally just when the engineers tap through every input, all the drums, all the keys, all playback stuff, right? And then that you're ready for show. And so, the thing about tap through is if you've already gone through all your checks and made sure everything's right on your end, so as far as if something comes up in tap through where it's like, hey, playback, we're getting, click down a different line or whatever, or so, you've kind of already gone through your own checks. So, hey, it's probably not an issue with me. You can double check it, but you probably already know that something must be patched wrong on your end or something, right? It's not me, because I've already gone through my checks, right? You already prepared and ready to go. So these are the things that kind of separate the amateurs from the professionals, is that it's your preparation, it's your level of preparation. All right. A cable goes out, you're not scrambling because you have another cable, right? You brought it with you intentionally. You just swap it out and you keep it pushing. All right. And it's not to say that anybody can get caught lacking, right? The reason why I know all this stuff is because I've been in situations where I did it wrong. I've been in situations where I wasn't prepared. I've been in situations where I didn't have what I needed. And so I learned over time, okay, these are the things that you need. And so if you get in a situation where something like that happens, don't feel like, oh man, don't beat yourself up about it. You just take the lesson and you keep moving forward. All right. That's really what all this is about. So I hope this helps. Anybody who's getting out there and doing gigs this summer, this stuff will help you a lot if you're doing festival runs, because the festivals get crazy. But if you feel like I missed anything, or if you got anything that you think will be cool to add to this list, feel free to comment below. like the video, all that good stuff. And I appreciate y'all. I love y'all, and we'll see you on the next one.